Hello and welcome to the Homesick to Happy Movers podcast. I'm Keisha, your host, and this is the podcast where I help you heal homesickness by leading you through the process of creating friendships and connection in your new area, even if you are super shy. And today we're talking about neighboring with my good friend Echo Alexzander, who just won an award of Missouri's top 10 most engaging neighbors. She moved to Missouri less than 2 years ago. And not only is she an award winning neighbor, but she's also an author in the Homesick book collaboration. So without further ado, welcome Echo to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so could you share with the listeners who you are and what lights your soul on fire?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, my name is Echo Alexzander, and it's funny, I actually love to tell a name of my story to tell a little bit of who I am. My name, Echo, was actually gifted to me as a gift in faith that was spoken over me by my family members. We're a Christian family to be a voice of the Lord, to be an echo in the world. And so that's really who I am at my core, is being an echo in the world. And really, I think who God has called me to be. I joke my life word is adventure. Like that is who I am, is out in the world and on adventure. So whether it's moving or the current season of my life is homesteading. So just so much happening, and neighboring has been such a fun part of that in the last 2 years. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So you moved less than 2 years ago, correct?
Yeah, we up and left Oregon and moved to Missouri in January of 2021. We had no connections or family here. My husband had lived in a different part of Missouri many years ago, and I had visited one time before, and we packed everything we owned in our truck and loaded up our two cats and drove out to completely start over our lives, our businesses, and everything. And so we were super blessed to find our dream home. We live at the end of a small country gravel road where only a few families live. Each of us have 5 to 10 acres of land, and we just started this close neighbor. Eventually we started meeting families along the way, but yeah, we knew absolutely no one when we showed up. We never even heard of the town we bought our home in. And so we just followed what the Lord was calling us into and found ourselves in our dream home and an amazing neighborhood.
Mhm. And that's such a big move. You mentioned that you had been there to the state once. Like that's a huge transition. Did you have any anxiety come up?
It was, for us, as a lot of people had changes happening in their lives in 2021 and around that time. Really, we were in a pretty traumatic place, and so in a way, it was a move of relief. Seeking freedom is where really the precipice of why we chose to leave our family, leave our friends, leave our business, everything behind. As you say, we're talking about it in our upcoming book, so we're excited to share that story. But for us, it was really, felt that God was closing those doors, and that was not where we were meant to be, and that felt more and more obvious in how those doors were closing. And so we chose to, in faith, step out and say, God, we clearly have no idea what this is going to look like, but we know that you're going before us, and that's what it's about. And we're going to step out in faith, financially and otherwise, and friends and resources. We have no idea what to expect. We'd moved around a lot, but not like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And even when we can't see, God can see. So I
Right.
like to remind myself. Yeah. So what is your definition of being a good neighbor?
I really think it's being intentional. I believe that, it really takes time and desire, really that commitment to invest in neighboring, as I call it, in our busy modern world. Most of us, have our needs met. We're not dependent on other people. We don't see people sitting out on their front porch swings like they used to. I bought a country home and I have a little porch swing and I love sitting out there. But even if I do, there's no one anywhere around me. So our world's just maybe a little different. So I think it really takes us being intentional. And I can share an example of that. We had met another family, actually just online on social media, that had also moved from Oregon to Missouri, looking for very similar lifestyle that we were, of freedom, of homesteading. And sort of that independence. A year or so passed. I think they moved just before we did, and got to talking to them and realized that they actually were planning to leave Missouri. And I thought, oh, I was so surprised, and I asked why, and they were just unhappy with the area and what had happened, and the things that they were not finding favor and success in was exactly what my husband and I were thriving in. And it was having relationships. It was having found a place to root in a way because there was community there, whether we had known them previously or not. It was making such close connections that we could trust people so quickly and so deeply, beyond neighbors, calling these people friends, whether it was homesteading connections, just neighbors to borrow a cup of sugar from, and those sorts of things, and feeling just, again, so safe, so home. And they hadn't found that. And I thought, why had I found that and they hadn't, when we had such a similar story? And it was, I had invested so heavily to create it and to create the space and invite others into it with me. Certainly it's a relationship, it's not mine alone. And it really, we just saw such blessings come out of that investment and then that time. And my husband ran up to me the other day. He'd gotten an email and came into my office and said, "This neighboring thing you're doing is working. Look at this email I just got." It was someone we'd been reaching out to, and they responded, and they were so excited to meet us. And it was just so cute that he saw it in that way. It's working, the neighboring thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And I liked what you said about like you've been intentional, you've set intention for creating it. And I think that's a huge thing is we need to create it instead of wait for it to happen.
yeah, I just don't think it's going to come, especially if you're new and you're maybe not a part of whatever it is already established. Maybe you move into an area and there's a great community and they already do potlucks or different things, and you'll be really blessed to be able to just plug right into that. But I think more often than not, most of us, especially living very rural, are not going to find that. Maybe just out there, have to seek it out. And so I think creating the space, and whether it's a new job or neighboring, I love to use the example of being new as the excuse to do the thing. Hey, I'm new, I don't know what's out here, I'm going to go ask the question, or I'm going to seek it out, as opposed to people that maybe had been in an area, they didn't think of that. They've already lived here, they already met people that they didn't, and therefore they've not had the excuse to start it up. And so I've created that of, hey, I'm new, so I'm going to ask the questions, or I'm going to go knock on a door, or I'm going to do those things. And use that as my in of, I'm new, you don't know me, let's connect.
Yeah. And it's such a good perspective switch because I feel like some people can say, I'm new, so I'm not going to go out.
Yeah.
And so having that perspective switch is so important. So what part of meeting your neighbors do you love? And if there's somebody too shy listening to meet their neighbors, what are they missing out on?
Yeah, I would say, the thing that I love so much is how simple it can be to do once maybe you get past the initial anxiety or unsure feelings that might come up, and then really how amazing the results can be. Again, we have been so blessed by the relationships that we have sought out and built and continue to foster. It takes time and thoughtfulness at times, but often it's just taking action when you see something. If you're driving by someone or you see something happening in your neighborhood, that you can stop and help, or stop and do something. But I just find such joy after meeting and getting to know neighbors, and having them to share with, inviting them to events, knowing someone that if we're going to have a barbecue, I can say, hey, come over, we're going to do something, and have someone that I can go to when I have needs, and not being afraid to say, we got our moving truck, I think, gosh, we moved in January. We got our moving truck in May of the following year.
Oh,
But we
wow.
were really like weird minimalists for a long time. And so we didn't have a lot of things. And so we, could ask a neighbor, or when you move and you don't know who's a good dentist. And so, having people to go to that, not just social media, but having real connections and things. Or, hey, we don't own a tractor and I have 10-acre field that I need mowed. Who in my neighborhood does have one, and what could I pay them to help me, or barter, or, just share, or just ask them. And so often people, have done things for us for free. Oh yeah, we'll bring our tractor over. You don't need to pay us. We'll just help you out, and that's just been so awesome. So I think even if you're shy to do it, I think as soon as you build a few of those types of connections and meet some of those neighbors like I have, I hope it really can, change the perspective that, man, this is a gold mine if I choose to leverage it that way. And I bring value to this community as well. So I want to make myself available and share what I have, those talents and things that I have with these people as well. So if I, I'm too shy and stay home, I can't bless others. I can't share my faith with them. I can't do those other things that God put me here for a reason. And maybe it's temporary for me. I hope it's my forever home and homestead. But if I'm not taking that step, then I'm also keeping that from them. And I know I can bless people when I step out in faith, or get over that anxiety, whatever that is.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So do you have a framework or a process to develop friendships with your neighbors?
I I really think that, for us, how our neighboring adventure began was just movement into action. For us, we moved, like I said, to a very rural area, and we brought maybe a fresh set of eyes. The little, small winding roads that we live on are so incredibly beautiful. I joke that it's the definition of over the hill and through the woods to grandmother's house. We live on small rolling, very windy hills and roads, and there's streams that you'll drive through and cross that have water when the season's ready. And it's so beautiful. And what we saw is a lot of trash, just things had fallen off cars or pop cans or whatever it was, just all strewn across these little roads and in these streams. And I thought, that's so simple. I'm sure the people that have lived here just kind of gotten used to it. Unfortunately, it just is what happens on these back roads that the state or whomever doesn't maybe maintain. And maybe they've just gotten used to it. And I thought, well, I'm bringing a fresh set of eyes, and I think we can do better. And so my husband and I put on our work gloves, I think within a month of moving in, grabbed some big trash bags and headed out down the road. And we walked about a mile out and a mile back, and collected 5 huge bags of trash in that time. And
Wow.
just being out there, we thought, this is so simple. We can pick trash up and we can see this neighborhood in a different way. We can go slowly and walk along and look at the road signs and see where we're at and see houses that we'd maybe driven by fast before I hadn't seen. And people would wave to us. Maybe we had someone stop and give us a bottle of water and ask what we were doing. And so I thought, how simple, I can walk around and pick up some trash. And we realized, oh my word, 5 bags in 2 miles. There was obviously a need. And then as people realized what we were doing, then they said, oh, okay, if you do this again, let me know. And we've done it, almost monthly for that whole first year that we were there. And that we've been in here in Missouri, we kept doing it. We kept inviting other people, and I finally started posting it on the Nextdoor app or on social media and said, hey, neighbors, you may not know me, but we're going to do this roadside type cleanup. It's very casual, just come. We've had tiny little kids come with us. We've had elderly people. I said, if you want to drive the car, you don't have to, you can help us with traffic control maybe, or even if you're not physically able to do it. And it was such a simple thing of just picking up garbage, but maybe something that other people didn't want to do. But for us, it was a way to be in action, a way to serve people in our community and ourselves. We loved how the roads looked afterwards, and hopefully kept trash out of our water systems and sort of things. So you never know when you might be able to help solve something small, some community problem that could open doors to relationships, to meet people as you're out and about doing it. Maybe you have a dog, you can walk and you can grab some trash along the way, or you can start walking through different neighborhoods and seeing and start to learn the local systems. As we did a garbage cleanup, we then learned how to call the county roads department and have them come pick up tires that we collected, and they were so thankful. And now I have their phone number. And so you never know just what little things as simple as picking up trash that maybe not everyone wants to do, but is definitely something my husband and I could do on a sunny afternoon and on a Saturday. So we had fun, and man, it was such a good way to just be out there and start it out. Even if we didn't meet anybody on our first try, we kept at it and kept doing it and kept seeing the improvements to our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you said you had a fresh set of eyes, um, I really like that because you're looking at it as an asset. And and sometimes I hear people say like, "Oh, well, I'm different. I don't really fit in here." And I usually tell them like being different is good. Like having a different view is good, and it actually can be like a breath of fresh air for everybody there, right? Like
Yeah, and
somebody
I
who
think
can
it's such a
do that.
balance between respecting the new culture that you've moved to, right? I want to understand the country life and I want to know how people live here successfully and be a part of that. At the same time, I want to bring benefit, not necessarily say you're doing it wrong, but I think we could all agree that garbage on the road was not ideal. Maybe, the local farmers had just kind of gotten used to it. And so we could bring hopefully a benefit for all of us by just doing that change. We don't want to change your neighborhood or change these roads. We want to make them better. They're amazing. And so how can we help improve them together?
Yeah, yeah. And it's so cool how you're able to do that and then develop friendships and networks all at the same time.
Who knew you could make friends picking up trash?
Yeah. So, what advice would you give the listener who wants to create a community where they live, but they don't know where to start?
Yeah, for us, our idea was just to don't be afraid to try something new. So we had done, I think, a good job in our first year to meet people along our little road. Like I said, there's 5 or so families, so that was easy to accomplish. But in a rural area, we really didn't know how to meet other people in our larger community. And so we decided to host a barbecue. We thought, you know what, we're just going to host an event. We have lots of space. The weather's nice. We'll have a big barbecue outside and just invite people over. So I went door to door and started knocking on neighbors' doors that I didn't yet know. And again, rural area, you're driving up long driveways and I kind of took some kind of, I think I had a little flyer that I made up. I called it a neighbor reunion. I thought for some of us, and I wrote on there, we'll meet for the first time. For others, it will be coming back together that have lived here maybe for years and generations. So I'm calling it a neighbor reunion. And so for me, I just went around and had my business and my contact information on there and just literally knocked doors. And then it sounds scary at first, but if you shift your thinking to the fact that you have the perfect excuse being that new person. And for us, the outcome was incredible. We thought to have a kind of a sign-in sheet to share contact information. So we asked people to maybe share their phone number, email, and where on the street that they lived, and we're able to kind of capture that and send it out to the group after. We had over 30 people come to our home and
Wow.
join us for this event. We had people come that had never met one another in real life that shared property lines. They lived
Oh,
adjacently. They'd never met in real life. And until they got into my home, that was the first time they met and they connected and they had lots of questions for one another. And I thought, how amazing that opportunity just hadn't maybe presented, that they didn't do it on their own. But now we've created space that, they're here. And like I said, the partnerships that have come out of that for tractor help, we've had recently an animal emergency that we needed first aid. We had a house fire and they needed to get emergency services in, and we were able to start immediately calling people around because we knew who lived where. We've done so much in sharing our harvest and our abundance, whether that's gardening or the livestock that we have. We've got sort of an informal neighborhood watch that's emerged from this. We've done this a few times now. We've had these neighbor reunions and they were so excited, the people that started to participate with us, that they said, I want to host the next one. I want to host the next one. We immediately had sort of a wait list of who was going to be the next host for our little neighbor reunion. And so we did it again. We had over 30 people the second time, not the same people.
wow.
So we now have 60 to maybe 80 people on our email type list. And so when there was an emergency or something, we could send it out. Like I said, we had this opportunity to continue hosting. So we're thinking maybe quarterly we'll have these types of big events. But in the meantime, we have immediate availability. When we had a recent crisis, like I said, with an animal, unfortunately got shot by a hunter and left in the woods, one of my neighbor's dogs. We had the opportunity to come together. We were immediately on the phone with different neighbors. We had witnesses, we had the sheriff involved, and we immediately could call to action in a way that we never could have. We saved the dog. We got, justice was able to be served. We had witnesses, we had camera footage from different homes. And again, because we had that already all in place, that infrastructure for a safe and healthy neighborhood. And so even when something terrible happened, we could come together and create, I think, the best possible outcome because of that. And so in hindsight, I was just so proud that we'd done that. We created this opportunity to create as best of safety as we could, and if something does happen, we can deal with it together And again, in a way that we didn't have emergency services next door. We had to drive, this animal far away to get the care he needed, but we got it all handled in that way. So just, you never know that by something like starting a barbecue and inviting some people over, it could just explode into something really amazing. And, even if you don't have a huge space, I would still, pack your living room full, or if it's a nice day, host it at your community park. Don't let little things like that be a barrier. It doesn't have to be perfect. We literally had moving boxes all over our living room and said, hey, we just moved. Look, you can see we just moved. And people, you were so accommodating. It was not a problem. So don't wait for it to be perfect. Don't wait for it to look a certain way. Just create the space and invite people in.
I feel like you are redefining what community means. Like for some people, community means, just the people who are living around you. But as I see, like in your definition of community, it's a support group. It's like a very close knit, almost more of like close friends and family feel.
I can't remember. There's a term for it, something like third space, where most people have work and they have home, and then there's some other space. So if you live, in a larger city, that might be a community center or a fitness center that you go to. Often people, that's where they meet people and build relationships, is a third space. Well, my opportunity, we're so rural, we don't have those services. We have a tiny little town and a gas station and a post office, so we don't have that. As a rural farmer, I'm very independent and on my own, and I often don't leave my homestead for a week at a time. Really, so I work from home. And so in a way, I really challenged myself to say, okay, what could a third space look like in community? Well, I have a fire pit. That could be a third space. I can invite people that this is a safe place to come. My husband and I have lots of room, and we're very accommodating. If there was an emergency, I would welcome you here, come here and let us help you if we're able. So maybe again, that third space in our community is going to be mobile. And the next time we had a barbecue, it went somewhere else. And that was perfect, because then everyone got to meet that neighbor and see their home and that sort of thing. So I thought maybe in our community, that third space is as each of our homes. And we just open those up, those of us that are comfortable to do so, and, create that. And so now people have an open invitation. Come on over. I might be wearing my farm boots and sweatpants, but you're welcome to come by just the same. And so again, I think we put so many expectations sometimes on, I want to have people over unless my living room is clean or these sorts of things, but we just do real life. That's the adventure. It's real life. I might have dirty boots on, but come on over anyway.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so authentic and such a great way to build trust, right? To see not just a person when they're out on the town, but when they're at home and see their environment, and it just reinforces the strength of that community. So are there any pitfalls that you see people do when trying to develop relationships?
Yeah, I would say, that very first time I went door knocking, a part of me was like, I hope no one meets me with a shotgun or, thinks I'm trespassing, or a salesman, or, all these negative stereotypes of what that might look like. And I think the first, couple times when I was going to host the event, I went into 10 or 15 doors and I knocked, and only one family met with sort of any amount of, not as interested. They, sort of were honest with me that they liked the neighborhood before all the people like me had moved in. It used to be very, very rural and only one or two homes. And now there's a lot of homes and all the lots have been sold, but still very rural, 10-acre lots, but still, not real easy to get around to neighbors. And so they were so kind, and, even they still stood and talked to me, and then, we still got to know one another, but they chose not to come to our little barbecue, and that's okay. I thought if that's the worst that happened, is I still met them. I still know who they are. They have my phone number if they ever needed me, and I will continue forward. And I thought, they didn't slam the door in my face or anything scary, so you never know. Maybe someone's just not as open to it. You might not win them all, and that's so okay. But I'll tell you, so many others, it almost was kind of a joke with my husband. I would go out to say, I'm going to go do some more neighbors, and he was, mowing the lawn. I thought I'm going to go out and do some more. And I was gone for hours. He started getting worried about me. People invited me into their home. They showed me their land and their farm. We talked for hours on their front porch. My closest neighbor, she's about 92, 93. She just hugged me after we left. She said, "I'm so glad you're my neighbor. I'm so lucky to have you." And we just hugged like she was my own grandmother. We just met. I just knocked on her door and I was there for hours talking, and she couldn't believe how lucky she was and couldn't wait till we could have dinner together. And so you may get some people that aren't into the vision of neighboring, and they moved out far where they are or into your neighborhood and don't want to make friends, and that's okay. But you might still know them and still have them if you needed it. But man, others may change your life just by knocking on their door and introducing yourself. So, there could be pitfalls, but I think the relationships that are possible are worth pursuing.
Yes, yes, that's awesome. So what led up to getting the award of being Missouri's top 10 most engaging neighbor?
I could not believe it. That was such an honor. I had really been able to connect with, now I call my mentor, David Barton. He's here at our Missouri Extension office and is really a champion in Missouri and nationwide. He himself has won a lot of awards, and I've attended some of his neighboring trainings, and I thought, okay, how can I apply what he's teaching? And he has a monthly training that anyone in the nation can apply to. I'd happily share that resource with you. And I thought, how can I apply neighboring, the concepts he's sharing, into rural life, into rural Missouri? And so that was the challenge that I told him I was taking on. And so through those neighbor reunions, those sorts of things, I just kept putting out connections and making homesteading connections and building networks, and taking part of so many different programs and different things. And again, just really immersing myself. I work full time, I homestead full time. And so it took a lot of intentional planning to do those types of things, but I saw the value and really was passionate to do it. So Sonia, my neighbor, who I have become such good friends with, she is so kind. And another one, that I just fell in love with when I met her, she said in her nomination for that award, she said, "I first met Echo when she drove up to my property and introduced herself as my new neighbor over the ridge." She said, "I should have done that for her, but she took the initiative." And I thought, yep, that is exactly what was happening there. And I'm so glad that I did, because now Sonia and I have become fast friends. We've done that neighbor reunion. She's hosted that event. She's taught me so much about gardening and local native plants. She's taken me shopping, some beautiful antique stores lately. We often swap produce and harvest, and she'll give me, tomatoes, and I'll give her eggs. And it's just such a blessing, to have a friendship that deep come from showing up in someone's yard and introducing myself. So I'm so lucky that to have her as a neighbor and a friend, and was honored at her nomination for the efforts that I'm bringing to rural Missouri. And I know what I'm doing is not unique to me. Anyone can do it if they really want to do it. And even if you're not in a rural area, if you're in the city, you can do the same sorts of things, and it'll look so unique and so perfect for you right where you're at.
Yeah, and I think the way that you're showing up is breaking limiting beliefs for other people. Like, you are showing up in such abundance and creating those friendships and those relationships with your neighbors that I'm sure that people who are listening are like, oh my gosh, I can do this too.
Right.
So,
And that's always the thought we have when we move somewhere new. The neighbors will come to my doorstep and bring me the plate of cookies, right? That's the American dream of moving or having a new neighborhood. But I'll tell you, we have a beautiful tree called the Eastern Redbud, and you can make a syrup, I learned, out of the flowers, out of the blooms. It's a beautiful pink color. And I thought, what a unique thing to this new area that I live in. And so I picked a bunch of flowers and I made these cute little syrups into little tiny mason jars. And I thought, I'm going to take this on May Day and share flowers on May Day as sort of a tradition. And so I was sweets. And so I took out these little syrup bottles. I took them to the neighbors, even though they hadn't come to meet me yet. I thought this is going to be a fun thing. And so I made these little jars up and went out and, shared them with neighbors. So it doesn't need to look that extravagant. I just thought it was going to be a fun thing to try, and I didn't need a whole quart of syrup, so I'll put it in tiny little jars and share it with others. So you never know, just something small. If you're a really good baker, or you have some talent that you could do and share, how you might bless people, and that again would be your perfect excuse to head over that I just baked these wonderful cookies or things and I wanted to share them with you. So here I am on your doorstep.
Yes. So what encouragement do you have for the listeners today?
Gosh, I think it's just, have fun. Don't be overwhelmed that you have to do it immediately after you move, obviously. In a way, we just jumped right in because we saw an opportunity to take action but also take some time to explore the neighborhood, what's going on around, check your local community message boards, but really just have fun. What are you passionate about? What would you love to do in your new neighborhood that you've either never been able to do, like us, if you all of a sudden now own a homestead that you didn't have before? I've immersed myself into those activities and had a lot of questions. How do I do this garden in the Ozarks? And how do I do raised beds? And I've got chickens now and all these things. So I just immersed myself into those things, and it created opportunities for knowledge that I needed to seek out and find, and questions that I had for people that were local and experts and things. So, as you've settled and as you felt comfortable to start, playing around or enjoying things or taking walks and seeing what's in your neighborhood, to me, I make it an adventure wherever I live. People tend to keep to themselves here. Missouri residents are very independent people, so I just went to them. That's okay. I'm been all over the country. I think my husband and I have lived in 43 states between us, so we've been all over and seen a lot of the world. And so therefore I will go to you. If you're a stay home kind of person, I'm going to be on your doorstep. But just have fun. It can be a complete adventure. Go armed with a smile and your contact information, and you just might make a best friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Where can the listeners connect with you?
Yeah, definitely most of my information, my blog, I certainly share about neighboring and homesteading and so many other things, are at echoalexzander.com.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming on the
Yeah.
podcast. You have shared an abundance of value here.
Good. I'm glad.